intersect.
Good. That's
Yeah.
the system, right?
Yeah, it's the whole system.
Right. Lillian.
Hi, my name is Lillian Green. I'm the Equity Director for the Early Learning Division. I'm also staffing this committee.
Yay. Lucky us. Okay, on the phone, Sadie, will you introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Sadie Feibel, Director of Early Childhood Programs for Latino Network.
Awesome. Welcome. Thanks, Sadie. And Patricia?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Patricia Alvarado. I'm Director of Education Programs at Adelante Mujeres.
Awesome. Thanks for being on the phone, Patricia. And Rochelle.
Hi, my name is Rochelle Hibbard, and I'm the Manager of Teacher Preparation for Kindercare Education.
Awesome. Thanks, Rochelle. Anyone else online? No.
Sorry, hi. Can you guys hear me? It's Carmen.
Oh, great.
Hi, Carmen.
Hi, this is Carmen Ellis. I'm the Training Coordinator at Child Care Resource and Referral in Multnomah County.
Awesome. Thank you, Carmen, for being on the line. And our host has just walked in from greeting another committee member. Joy?
I was actually waiting.
Oh, you were here.
Joyce Harris, I'm Manager of Community Engagement here at Education Northwest.
And Kelly Pope from Vail. Who just arrived on Alaska Airlines. In the mask, red line.
Wow. I just want to blow applaud you for that. That is no easy feat.
Only one flight delay. Wow. Yeah. Thank you. Everything else in you. What a morning. Yes. Kelly will always get the award for coming the furthest. There's no doubt about that. All right, Lillian sent out the July meeting minutes. Are there any corrections or additions to those? As always, they're very thorough. We appreciate that. All right, they will stand approved as they were distributed. And then, if you remember at our last committee meeting, we asked Lillian to put together sort of a year in review, so we could take a look at sort of the 16-17 sense of what the early equity implementation committee had worked on. And so this is reflective of that. And Lillian, do you want to walk us through that, if you would? And thank you for pulling this together.
You're welcome. Hi, everyone. In front of you, and also I'm projecting it on the screen. So for everyone who's connected online to your computer, you should be able to see my screen now and the documents up there as well. So I will, at the request of the committee, I wanted to take an opportunity to kind of highlight some of the work that we've been engaged in across the 16-17 year. And then I broke it down. I thought the easiest way to break it down was actually via the different committees that brought us work, and then through that, then also kind of the body of work through the Equity Implementation Committee that you kind of took on that was outside of committees. Just to highlight some of these major pieces, I think what really kicked us off and really energized this group this year was the shift that we made in how bodies brought material to the Equity Implementation Committee, kicked off by Sue and kind of developed and fostered by Sue. We kind of reworked the workflow of how information, how projects, how initiatives, programs, before they were out in the field was brought to the Equity Implementation Committee. So I think in previous years, we may have, seen a couple items from different committees. This year, and especially through the last 6 to 7 months, every single one of our meetings had a component of other committees within the Early Learning Council bringing materials to us to provide feedback, to provide responses to, or to respond to provide recommendations on. So that really shifts, that workflow really shifts the body of work that we were doing. So if we can do it, so I'll just, when we're thinking about best beginnings, we looked at that family support questionnaire. We had two really great presentations on Healthy Families Oregon, and then from those presentations, we were able to provide feedback and recommendations around the 5-year strategic plan, their strategic plan questions, and we also scheduled a follow-up to all that body of work. So after Erin and her team was able to kind of go through that, they're going to be able to come back to us with kind of how that landed. We looked at another major body from Best Beginnings was that infant toddler assessment that we've had multiple presentations on and provided in-depth feedback on. From the CCEC, we looked at a lot of bodies of rules or like principles for these rules. So we looked at things around Spark. We also looked at specific things around vehicles and childcare settings, if you remember the conversations around the vans, and provided feedback around that.
Oh, I missed the conversation around the van.
Yeah.
But it was good, and I think we came to it really, we were able to recommend some really great points. We had a conversation around square footage requirements in the childcare settings, and that was a really robust conversation that really kind of weighed, recommendations, how that impacts providers, and us having a really great conversation around that. So for measuring success, we had two really great presentations. One about like kind of a hub informational presentation, and then we also had an opportunity to review and provide recommendations around hub metrics this year, which is a major one. I'm thinking about the early learning system and how in that body of work that hubs are leading across the state, being able to support that and really looking at and attach to the metric kind of key bodies of hubs work. And then for the Spark Ad Hoc Committee, we looked at standards and tiers. We're going to be having a conversation around incentives today. And then we provided feedback and recommendations around community engagement strategies that's supposed to help engage and support the body of work and the great work that's already been happening across the state. And just having an opportunity to hear what everyone's been doing and kind of having that in the forefront of this committee has been a wonderful opportunities for the committee this year. So I'll actually want to open it up. Was there any additional bodies of work that I didn't quite mention or highlight on this page that anyone wants to bring forth around bodies of work that stood out to you over this past year that we've engaged in?
It's hard to believe that you could have missed anything in this. It's one of those examples of watch out what you ask for, because the committee was saying, and Eva was leading this conversation for a while, saying we need things to come here and we need them to come early from the other committees so that our input can have an impact on where other committees are going. And I'd say that is what this list reflects. So nice work, because obviously it means that the staff had to really connect internally to make sure that all these different committee staff people are feeding information to Lillian. And Alyssa has played a really key coordination role in that. So she's not here, but we have a big thanks to Alyssa.
Yeah, this was fantastic. I can't believe how much I missed.
I swear you went away.
I was the holdup.
No, it wasn't.
What I wanted to say is that this to me is a reflection of the power of committees to ask for solid work to do. Because if you remember last September, I was at the point where I was like, you know what? I came here because of the experience I have in equity and all of this, and I didn't feel as if I was being able to really contribute based on what I know, and that I didn't need another meeting just to come and mark off and check off and say I went to this meeting. And so the committee had a discussion, and everybody kind of said, yeah, we want some stuff we can sink our teeth in. And the department folks heard that. And we said, we want people to come to us with real stuff. And so I just feel glad that as a committee, as a member of a committee, we were able to kind of say, look, you all need to put us to work. And I'll be darned, you did.
And don't worry, it's still coming. I'm like, no, we cannot have that this month.
And I think the thing that really made me feel that, wow, we are really, providing some useful feedback was when we got the feedback from one of those groups that said, based on the discussion with us and the recommendations, they were able to change, the policies or the stance. I can't remember which one it was, but I shared that with my CEO because I was telling him, I said, now I'm feeling like, my organization supports my participation in this, and now I feel like when I go, when I meet with him every week, I can say, I always give him an update, even if it's on the times that we don't have meetings, I can give him an update. And so I just want to say that as a member, this is what I think other committees need to understand. You actually help to shape what happens in these meetings and make the connection. So, when I was looking at this, I thought this was for the whole early learning division. And I looked again, and I said, wait a minute, this is us. Right. This is our committee. And so it really feels good, and you all are to be commended for lining them up and having them come and present. That, keep them coming.
Well, we've got Spark here today.
Spark over here.
So we will do that.
Right.
And just one other quick comment, and then we will move on to our guests. I think we'll just jump to Spark.
Yeah, and then we can move things around.
Is that one of the things Lillian and I talked about over the summer is making sure that we figure out how to have the feedback loop to the EIC so that we know where our comments and input have influenced the work of the other committees. So that just is sort of finishing that feedback loop.
Right.
So
I'm so happy that this got done, and that because I heard, I could tell, not even just like from hearing it directly, but just from the lack of participation and everything, that people didn't feel like this was worthwhile, and it was frustrating for me to know that as long as I've been involved with the council, that equity has always been a major part of the conversation, but the committee wasn't feeling like they were actually part of the work. And so this makes me really happy that there's been this big turnaround in the last year.
Yeah. And it was because of lots of people, but obviously with it. So thank you, Lillian, for this.
I'm just recording the work in which y'all did.
Yes, Jess.
Yeah.
Okay, so any comments from people on the phone? All right.
Hi, this is.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Hi, this is Patricia. I have to say that I am very proud to see all the work that you guys have been doing, and I just can't wait to be part of more work this year and more equity implementation among all the programs for the early learning community. So I'm happy to be part of this.
Great, awesome. Thank you, Patricia. And we're very excited that you are a part of it. Okay, let's jump to the Spark presentation and discussion, since we've got 3 guests here for that, and then we'll go back up and look at our work plan and stuff. So, Shauna, are you gonna?
Can I scoot up?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, you can.
Move to the side so you're not. Your back's not to me.
Thank you, Kelly. Great idea.
And while everyone's setting up right now, just to, for our first time individuals here, just to do a little setup around kind of how some of this works. So normally we get requests for presentations, or there's a request around some recommendations that this committee can provide to a body of work. So a presentation is, prepared, and the group comes and they present their body of work, and then there is a series of dialogues that happen afterwards with committee members about the work, and it's a back and forth conversation that really promotes engagement by all. So if this is your first time here, I just wanted to give a little kind of background to this, and looking forward to the dialogue after, depending on how they set it up.
That works. So the first thing I'll have you guys look at is the revision recommendation / prioritizing resources document that we submitted to everyone. And what this is, so as most of you know, and I'll give a little background since I know you have some new members, SPARK is the new QRIS quality rating and improvement system for child care across the state of Oregon. The system was, QRIS has been around for some time in Oregon. There was recently a deeper dive to look at how we could improve things, and we're coming out with a new iteration, which is going to be SPARK, and which is going to have some exciting improvements, a lot of them related to equity. And if you review the minutes from your last meeting, you'll see that we visit you guys often, and that there was a lot of great feedback we received from you guys previously that we've integrated. And today we're coming to bring to you a new chunk of the work to get some feedback and input from all of you on thoughts about it moving forward. So what we're looking at is the prioritization of resources. And so looking at the revision is to try and help the programs that are serving the underserved populations, the children furthest from opportunity, and to have the supports being stronger for programs that are serving these children. And these programs receive support, incentives, and technical assistance based on their prioritized score.
Shauna,
yes.
This is Sue. If I can interrupt 1 second, I'm just wondering, where are these two documents in the SPARK ad hoc committee pipeline? Have they looked at these? So are these coming from staff, or are these coming from the committee?
Wonderful question. This is Shauna again. And so if you'll notice on the document we'll get to second, it just says prioritization resources presentation at the very top. It will let you know the things the committee has already talked about and gleaned from this and had input on is the first little section. And then they help us come up with questions for us to bring forward to you. So the bottom is the very specific questions for EIC. And the middle section is the policy questions that they also answered. And so we do have the feedback from the committee. We have the ways that we want to integrate all the feedback and specific questions we felt this committee could support us best by answering. Does that answer your question?
Yes. So this prioritizing resources document is really from the SPARK ad hoc committee to us.
Yes, we specifically designed this form just for this meeting for you guys.
So when you say we and our and us, that's saying the ad hoc, that's talking about the SPARK ad hoc committee. That's the we,
yes.
our, us. Okay. That's not we, our, us.
You, our, us. Yes. You, them, and that. Yes. Yes. But the document that says revision recommendation and prioritizing resources was revised in August 2017 is the exact same document that went to them, and they reviewed this at our August meeting. So that is the same document that we're looking at right now that they received, and then this additional document was compiled for this presentation to guide the conversation and further input.
So this is sort of based on the task force discussion of the revision recommendation.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Just trying to figure out where all of our advisory people and lay people who are supporting this effort.
Yes. Yes, and this works. So the way that we're doing this is we presented it. It was presented by our contractor and the division in August. We're talking to you about it in September, and then we'll bring it back to the committee with those changes. So the changes from the committee haven't fully been implemented by the division and the contractor just yet, because we want to have this additional input to finalize any revisions, and then we'll come back to the SPARK ad hoc committee to look at again once we've integrated those pieces.
Okay. Good. Thank you. Just trying to understand the flow of
the flow. You got it.
Great.
We can definitely explain that.
Okay. Thanks, Shauna.
So under that, so back to the revision recommendation prioritizing resources document, So the criteria for prioritization, the things that they're looking at is A, geographic location of programs, so that the programs are located in what we call poverty hotspots. Programs are in low income, free and reduced lunch Title I areas, which is defined by school district. Programs that are in the ERDC, the employment related daycare, B and C rate areas, which there's two lovely people that can explain that better than me if there's questions around that. Programs in the child care desert, areas where there isn't other child care programs.
Who defines the poverty hotspot?
The hubs use
This
them.
is Robin.
Yes, sorry, this is Robin. What we've heard is that we can get that data from hubs, and I don't know if hubs design it or who designs it, but that hubs use it as a.
I know.
True?
So this is Kelly. So I think that hotspots were in our original hub target work that we had to define where our hotspots were. But we started with something that either came. I was hoping you could help me. I think either the U.S. Census, there is a hotspot definition. Yep. But then we took that hotspot and then we said, and really, this is what it looks like in our hubs. So I started with my hotspot neighborhoods, which were disconnected in the city of Ontario, which didn't make sense because the kids go to all the different schools. So it didn't matter if they were on the southeast side or the northeast side of the railroad tracks. Anyway, so there is a definition around hotspots, and I would assume this is referring to the official poverty hotspots. It might be, and I was thinking it came from the U.S. Census or DHS. I thought DHS used the U.S. Census. Do you know?
So part of the RFP, the hub RFP process, this is Eva, and I remember that the data came from the state, but I can't remember if it was like a combination of OHA and DHS data.
Yeah. Guys, this is Carmen. I just Googled it, and I'm going to send you what I found in the chat. So it's from the U.S. Census. The Census Bureau's definition of a poverty area, this is under hotspot, is a tract with a poverty rate of 20% or more. We define a high poverty hotspot as a census tract or contiguous group of tracts with poverty rate of 20% or more. And then I'll send you the link because it has a county table of the state of Oregon.
So I seem to think that there was some additional parameters from the ELD put on the hubs that helped refine that definition a little bit more and then give the hubs a little bit of room to say, yeah, that's probably what it looks like, but here's what else we've found.
So this is Kelly, and what I'd say is you're exactly right, but I think in these bullets under A, geographic location of program, so what I think most hubs did was they looked at those poverty hotspots that came from the U.S. Census, the document that came from the Early Learning Division, and then we added to that based on free and reduced lunch in Title I school districts. So we used what is, and you could use ERDC or you could use the child. I think the rest of these definitions expand that hotspot to be the geographic location of the program. I guess I'm comfortable with the way this looks, right? Because it isn't just, because the hotspot seems silly when you look at the map of Malheur County and where they were, or in Baker County, it was just this little tiny neighborhood in Baker County, and it's like, oh dear, that's, it's much, especially in frontier regions, because there's so much land with so few people. Anyway, the rest of these definitions clarify that.
Right, because it gets to the child care desert, it gets to the lack of resources.
Yeah. So when you're talking about geographic location, okay, sorry, I was just wondering where it came from. Yeah.
So that's a very useful conversation. Thank you.
Based on census, and then you just need to add the other bullets to really figure out.
This seems, it seems consistent with all the other.
It does, right?
Okay. And to expand on the third bullet, programs in employment-related daycare B and C rate areas, my understanding is that there's 3 different rate areas, and the A areas get a higher reimbursement. And so this is looking at the areas that get a lower reimbursement to help build capacity. And the way that you choose A, B, or C is based on the average of what is paid for daycare in those communities. So I'm saying it like this because I'm looking at people who know the answers. I'm saying all the questions.
Robin, do you want to add to that? Or?
There's a market rate survey that happens every other year, sometimes
even number of years.
Even number of years. So they're working on just data collection right now that does, it checks the market rate, so what people are charging for childcare, and then DHS uses that data to set the A, B, and C rates. And yes, the rest of it was right. The A rates get paid more than B and C rates, and so the idea was, if we want to know, we know quality costs money, and if those providers are already earning less money, we want to make sure that if we have resources to give, we can give them to those that can charge parents, that are charging parents and families less money.
So for perspective, for infants, currently in rate area A, for a certified in-home provider, that DHS reimbursement rate is $1,000 a month. For rate area B, it is, I want to say $660 a month. And then for rate area C, it's $550 a month. I could be off on the B, but I know it's like maybe 670 or something. Like it's in the 600 range. And then for rate area C, it's 550. And
that's significantly lower, though.
Right, it is. And you know, I don't know what happens in the market rate study. Bob, you know, and Bobby conducts that. So, but I know that other states do it differently, and their rate areas are a little bit more, have a little bit more parity across the state. So.
Okay, thank you, Eva. We obviously have several experts sitting at this table, which is great.
Which is necessary.
Yes. I'm surprised Autumn, I mean, I'm glad to see that the B and C rate areas, and I know that Autumn has passionately talked about this for numerous years. So I was like, oh, I see Autumn's influence in here.
That it would be B and C.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, rate area A definitely need a little bit more incentive too for participating in the Spark, but B and C need a little bit more boost to bring it to parity with the A.
Yeah. And that's one of the pieces of this document too, that we're using multiple measures to hopefully be able to capture those different pieces and making these decisions about resources and prioritizing them.
And I guess I have a piece just thinking about like this first area around thinking about the impact. Just say, for example, if you have a child care program in a rate area A or a more affluent area, however, you're serving children that would be considered furthest from opportunity, where is that entry point for them? Because, like, for example, if I have a program in certain parts of Portland right now, it's probably crazy expensive for child care. However, the population of children that I'm serving falls in line with the population that we kind of outlined, defined as furthest from opportunity. So I'm wondering kind of like what would be, you know, the niche, thinking about communities that are quickly being gentrified, however, are either busing children in, families bringing them in as a way to, you know, still maintain that cultural connection, for example, but they may live outside of this particular area, but they're being bused into other areas.
So I think, this is Shauna again, I think that that's a really important piece for us to keep as we move down, because one of the questions we have for you guys that we'll get to is this piece that who the provider is actually serving is information that makes it very valuable for resource prioritization. Whoever collecting that data or asking for that data is very burdensome and is something that for equity purposes we've not been doing, but that's the piece where we miss this marker. How do we measure if kids are coming in from a different area? So if we're not measuring, like, because if they're not in their own town, or we're using these measures for their little community, and they're going to the community, how do we make sure those resources are following the children and not just staying in those communities? So I think that's one of the questions that we are asking you guys actually to see what the priority is and looking at those two pieces, if we really should push to be getting child level data, if we feel we can capture that with some of the other markers that we have, or how we can kind of capture that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I want to keep that, but I want to table that so we get to that point in the conversation. Does that work?
I'll bring it back up, don't worry.
So then for the criteria under B, this is where we talk about the population served by program, which kind of fits into this conversation very perfectly. That was a nice segue, Lillian. So looking at the families who are receiving the employment-related daycare subsidy, children with special needs that we're able to track that information to programs. Where the children whose first language is not English, which is a little more challenging to track. Children also attending Head Start, Early Head Start, since they have multiple factors beyond poverty. Each program determines other pieces, so it might be that single mothers get a higher prioritization for those programs. It might be if they've experienced domestic violence, they get a higher prioritization. Like each community determines what factors they want to serve the neediest of the needy is how they set it. But with a Children for Some Opportunity, they have criteria there as well. So that would be an indicator that we can collect. Children also attending relief nurseries and needing those services. Children in foster care, children who are homeless, and children from migrant families. So these are populations that we have other measures that kind of track and we can gather data about these groups. With the children whose first language is not English, I'm looking at Tom and Robin right now, what's the measure that we're gathering that information from?
That would be reported by the provider.
By the provider. So that's the example of one of the things that needs to be reported by the provider.
And are they currently recording that and reporting that? Do we know? Or does it vary by provider, or?
They are not reporting it to us. I don't know if there's some funding there.
I think there's the only, like for in-home providers, the way that it would be reported could be, well gosh, I don't know, because I only know of one specific instance where the family was also ERDC recipient, was referred to provider, but then like there was such a language barrier, but they had to call DHS for an interpreter every time the parent came to have it. So there's, are they using interpretation services? And I don't know how you don't just sign up for that. You can just call in for that, right? So
there's the language line.
Yeah.
But I assume providers generally don't collect all of this information, all of these bullets.
No, not. I mean, they know who's on ERDC because they have to deal with DHS.
Right.
They know, and then children with special needs usually have DHS payments as well.
I think they would know this. I just don't
well,
know.
the one feeling looking at this that we'd be looking from the directly from the provider is the children whose first language is not English. And then as we go into the recommendations from the committee, is that we really wanted to make sure the goal of racial equity was not lost. And that's the one where we have the challenge of gathering the data on. And so that's one that we'd be looking to add to the population served. But again, the measure of how to collect that. We've talked about the potential race ethnicity piece with the provider being a marker, if that's easier to collect. Because again, even when you have children in your program, like I don't know for sure this child is half Russian and half Hispanic. Like I don't know that as the provider necessarily. So then how the provider gets that information from parents, and so the level of how we collect and get that information is what we're trying to figure out.
Every provider has to have intake forms in a contract that you fill out. Can we ask that, and it's through the state too. So I know that I have the forms at the office because I need to fill them out for Kati. So maybe if it's not already on those forms, can we add it? And make it optional so parents aren't freaked out about it, but
it has to be optional.
Yeah. Yeah. But then maybe it's there, and because the provider keeps that on file, but they also have to provide it to the state for the licensing too.
Are all of these things on the intake forms?
I don't know.
And I wondered where refugee fits in here, if it needs to be called out or not.
You know what? No, that's a really good point. We're looking at the refugee piece on that. So for these other pieces, I think it's our intention that we have other ways to collect. No?
No. So what we've looked at across, because many states are looking at prioritizing their resources, and so we've done some research on how do people do it. And what it's sort of looking like best practice is you want to have some of the data that you can verify. Like you can verify the address of a provider and you know where they're at. You can verify the ERDC if they have they're serving families with ERDC. Those are things you can verify. And then there are things that it would be self-reported. from the provider, and which means sometimes it would have to be self-reported from the parent to the provider. But oftentimes if you're doing extended care for Head Start families, the Head Start buses are coming and going, and that's something that providers know that they're also serving.
Or they providers do the transportation themselves.
Exactly, that can happen as well. And so that's sort of the balance that's here. We heard like Colorado does 50% data that they can verify, 50% that's self-report. And so the ones on here, except for ERDC, are things that they would be telling us, yes, I'm serving children with special needs as evidenced by if I'm receiving extra subsidy or I have their IFSP or IEP, those pieces. Children in foster care, they may or may not know that. If they know that, they can report that.
A lot of providers know when a child is in.
Yeah, usually they would. Homeless might be a little bit harder, and that's something that we maybe don't want to put on providers to ask all of their families if they're homeless or not. But
so are any of these factors already included in the SPARK, levels to go if you're at 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5? Is any of this information collected right in that system already or not?
Not currently. We don't ask about anything other than ages of children served. And if it's a Head Start program receiving funding, which is different than serving children outside of Head Start hours, but no. But that would be the proposals that we would begin to ask providers to provide this data so that we could have a fuller picture of what children are being served in the program and be able to prioritize.
We do know how many programs are serving kids on subsidy. That's a verifiable data. So we do report out the star rating of programs that are serving kids that are where kids are that are receiving subsidy in regard to star rated programs. So we have that piece of data.
And would you worry about it being a disincentive to providers to become part of the QRIS system if we ask them to provide additional information? So to be to have a star rating, whatever it is, we also need you to collect and report this information.
I think if it's integrated into a lot of things that or like if it's integrated into the paperwork that they're already required to do, then, and so it's like, oh, the parents fill it out, and then they're just the vehicle for getting it to the state or the hub or whomever, that would be one thing. If they're supposed to do something with it other than, then have it, be additional questions on the paperwork, then I think they might bristle a little bit. But there are already a lot of additional requirements that are part of this that, providers have questioned, is it worth it for me to do this, especially before we had the bonus rates for providers, and even currently the bonus are only for those who are full-time in ERDC, and that's the only mechanism for an additional rate unless you charge private pay families more, which is difficult because on ERDC we only serve less than, I don't even know what it is now. We were saying less than 18% of families that are eligible. But I imagine that that's going to drop down because we're going to serve even fewer families because of the lack of investment in child care from the legislature. And then also because we set the floor for reimbursement rates to be at least the 75th percentile, which is the recommendation from the federal government. We put that in statute, so that we would never go below that. And then, so what that means is, we have to pay providers more to keep them providing this for these families, but then with the lack of investment, it's fewer families served.
And sorry, I think there was somebody on the line that was trying to jump in. I could have been wrong. Sorry.
Okay. Yes, if anybody who's on the phone wants to make a comment, please just speak up. Or send Liliana.
I was going to say, the other, are we including programs that participate in preschool promise? It's not on the list.
This is for the prioritization of resources. We had not included preschool promise because they actually do get the support from preschool promise. This is prioritizing the programs and.
But one of the requirements for preschool promise isn't it that you participate in this?
Yeah, this is not for QRIS, for Spark specifically to be part of Spark.
Okay.
Specifically for the resources and the additional pieces that you guys, I'll have them describe a little better. So to get additional support and additional resources and additional things. This isn't for inclusion in Spark. This is for to get additional things on top of that to help you do
where we would focus. Okay.
Where we focus.
And so preschool promise was already focused. Okay.
Exactly.
So what about a child care program that serves children that go to preschool promise, but they're not a preschool promise?
It would.
It wouldn't matter.
It wouldn't matter. It wouldn't be negative, but it wouldn't add to their ability to get.
So I have a couple comments from.
Yes, Lillian.
So we have a couple comments from online. Sorry, I saw the chat box blinking. So we have one comment. I wonder if we should also use as a priority criteria organizations that provide strong family engagement opportunities for families of color. And Sadie also said, I would like to also suggest prioritizing support to providers of color as well. And there's, I support Sadie's suggestion as well.
Okay.
So does anyone on the phone want to, include additional comments or flesh out their thoughts that you posted via this chat line?
This is Carmen. I'm just nodding along to Sadie and Eva over here. And I would agree with what Eva was saying about in terms of collecting the information about children's race and ethnicity. I think that there's already so many things that are required that are pretty specific about the paperwork and program management in QRIS. In Sparks, I don't think that adding that one thing is going to be a big deal, particularly if the way that you report it is pretty fluid and easy.
I agree. Okay. Okay. Thank you. And was it Sadie who made the comment about providers of color?
Yes. Hi, this is Sadie. I just wanted to offer that also, just given all of the work we've collectively done around supporting the diversification of the workforce and investing in providers of color. And this seems like a really great opportunity to put that into policy. So I'm just curious if that was a conversation or if that's something that could be considered.
Yeah, good question. I assume that would go under additional considerations.
And that would probably fit under D when we get to D, but absolutely we can talk about that fitting into D, the provider professional development needs, or what providers would, where we'd add that in. But yes, we can definitely look at that. Could you speak, Sadie, this is Shauna, sorry. Could you speak a little bit more about the family engagement for families of color? Again, one thing we struggle with is how to measure pieces and bring that in, and thoughts about how we could actually capture or measure that.
I think that was Patricia's comment. I fully support it, but I want to let her speak to that.
Yes, this is Patricia, you guys. Hi. Yeah, I really believe that in order for us to provide more equitable support to children, we need to engage the families. I am not 100% sure on how to measure that, but I have seen that when you provide various opportunities, not only for education, but also for engagement for families of color, you get better results when they go to kindergarten. Families, not only children, but families are also better prepared. There are different ways of measuring that. I will say at least having a family engagement plan or some types of opportunities for family to get involved into the providers program.
Thank you, Patricia. So as part of the SPARK system overall, under the inclusion of children, families, and cultures under that measure, for a 3-star, they look at families welcomed, 4-star is family partnership, 5-star is families engaged in the program. So that's where they look at family engagement as part of SPARK. And so you're saying that we should find a way that in our prioritization of resources, that if we do have things like a family engagement plan or some way to demonstrate we're working on family engagement, that they be getting more resources as well as part of one of the factors?
I see it under C. This is Kelly. I see it under C, special services provided. When you are, as a provider, you're doing the extra effort to do evening care or weekend care or any of these other cares, that you're also providing family engagement.
But I'm wondering about the positioning of it, like as like special services. I think family engagement is like foundational, and I don't know, like with the positioning of it, I think in special services provided, it's it's special, and I think as we all know on the table, that's
how do we define family engagement? I can't remember.
So on the STAR level that you're asking, or if there's a different definition from that?
On the STAR level, I guess.
So currently, for the 5-star standard in the current draft, programs are committed to and value incorporating families in program planning and activities.
Also inclusive of 3 and 4, though.
Oh, sorry, that was 4. That was 5. So 4 is family partnership. Programs partner with families to support the learning and development of children and youth. And 3-star level is the program welcomes all children, youth, and families in a positive, culturally responsive, and respectful manner.
So as much as you say it's foundational, this indicates that it's the other way around. It doesn't begin strong. It gets stronger with the more stars.
Well, and I guess I also try to think of it like how I'm trying to think of the provider, the very few, which we need more. The providers that provide evening and weekend care are not just providing evening and weekend care. They're providing care starting at God knows what time. It's 3:30 a.m., when somebody drops off to go to their job, and then they take that, and then they have the slow trickle, and then it picks up, and then they have kids, and then they have kids till 11:30, midnight, they're taking care of kids at all hours. So how do you support that provider to build in a family engagement plan for all the different shifts that they're covering for families? And I just logistically, I'm supportive of doing that, and I know that those families need the additional support for, what are we going to do to help you get transition the kid from, daycare to school hours, and what do you need for that? I know that providers have these discussions with families, and that they're active in those discussions, but it's not anything formal. So how do we? I'm just trying, and how do we support that and get more providers doing the evening and weekend care? Because the providers that I know that have been doing it are ending because they're like, I'm too tired, I can't continue this.
We lost our one. We have one.
Yeah. Yeah, so it sounds like definitely supporting the evening and weekend care being a priority, but also understanding that they can't necessarily do everything, and folks have to have different focuses in different areas. And I think that's why looking at this for incentivizing this piece, because this really is like this list of things that we want to incentivize, so to speak, with prioritizing our resources to go to these pieces, and to make sure that we have an element that we're incentivizing evening and weekend care. But then it sounds like we also want the family engagement to be at a higher level, to potentially be a different type of thing that we're looking at incentivizing.
Yeah, right. How do you? Yeah. So, or maybe it's how do you help the provider connect the parent to the other engagement services, because they can't be everything to everyone all the time.
And I think it's I think it's going to be interesting as this is fleshed out to think about how that looks. That may not look like a provider saying hey, come to my house and we're having a parent night. Say hey, here's some community resources. hey, here's some community resources, or we know the back to school night is happening on this evening, here's a flyer, you know, stuff. It doesn't have to, I'm wondering how do we make sure.
Coordinate care that maybe not, that they're not necessarily, because, you know, sometimes you can't take the kid with you to meet, you know, to do some of the things. So either they're helping coordinate other care options or, you know, for parent programs or parent, you know, engagement of some sort, but that doesn't include the kids. Cause,
well, hopefully the CCR&Rs could help with some of that information as far as letting them know in the communities who knows the providers. Yeah, exactly. Part of that professional development.
Right. Well, yeah, you know.
Right. Okay, we probably need to keep moving here.
Keep moving forward. That works. That definitely works.
I just want to go back and affirm what you said about how the family is foundational to all of this. Right. And I agree that it's going to look really different in different providers or different settings, centers and home-based. And I've watched it work in really different ways. So I don't, on the QRES, it looks like the more stars you get, the more family engagement you have. And I don't think that that's necessarily, so I just thought that the conversation went a little odd in where family engagement fits. And I just want to make sure that we do believe that family engagement is the foundation, and yet it might not show up on this.
And it might be hard to quantify it because it happens in different ways for different people. I see how providers interact with parents and support them all the time. But
I don't know how to put it on here for a prioritization. I don't know.
And
maybe it doesn't go on.
Sorry, this is Shauna again. So I just want to back up because it sounds like maybe not everyone's as familiar with the SPARK system and how it works. And SPARK really is, although it does have star ratings to ultimately help parents feel more informed about their decision making when choosing providers, and for us to help understand where we have quality programs to continue to incentivize and support that, it really is a continuous quality improvement process. And a lot of the work that we've been done in doing this iteration is to kind of really highlight that and focus that. So as much as when somebody applies, they might be at the 5-star level in family, and that's great, and we encourage that. But where their stars lie is kind of looking at across the board where things are at, but they will have supports and ways to be looking at how to improve in all of these areas. So when we put down the SPARK areas of environment, learning and development, inclusion of children, families, and cultures, positive relationships, personnel qualifications, children's safety and program stability. Those are the foundational things. We say these are all foundational, these are all important. And then we try to measure like people working in all those different areas to improve their program and to be able to demonstrate that and really support them doing that. So we're not, all of those things we're saying are very important. That's why they're all areas we're including in this. And then that's the piece of them being able to, again, to go from more than just licensing to know that we are quality programs are improving in these areas and building in these areas.
And one of those with this middle one is family.
Inclusion of children, families, and cultures.
I just don't know what to do with family engagement on this
for the incentive
thing.
Okay, well, we can definitely note that family engagement is something that you guys were interested in trying to look at more, and maybe there's some piece of us doing like an option of having a survey done with families where they can maybe the families report back how engaged and supportive they are, because like we said, we have great providers that meet you at the door and make you feel welcomed and like their grandma and this is your child and they're going to take great care of them.
Well, and they're also talking about like what they see happening with the child and like suggesting other services and like even bringing in other services to the child care to help other kids, you know, learn about, you know, so like it happens in different ways.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We had some family providers doing parent cafes trying to connect the parents of the children who spent all day together. So it's just all, but that was
it is,
because everybody, I don't know that it fits in here. So it fits on QRES, on the stars. I don't know if it fits in here. I don't know how to do it.
And I'm wondering around, we were bringing up a lot of areas that, you know, to measure them, you know, it's not the, a check mark. It's not the traditional way in which we would measure things. So I would just throw out there, as we're trying to prioritize these pieces, how, you know, when we are faced with something that we don't know how to measure quite yet, you know, what are the ways are we still engaging with that concept? Because I think that can ultimately help us get to where we want to go. However, the way in which we would traditionally measure it, we don't quite have that, you know, we don't have that system yet in our mind. And I think the parent engagement is a prime example, knowing that it happens in a variety, it has to happen in a variety of ways. but are we comfortable with measuring it in a way where it doesn't show up as like you get tier A, B, and C, but you have implemented family engagement strategies, and for your particular type of childcare, it looks like this, and that's okay. And I'm wondering how we include that in the conversation.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I think that is a good piece to keep in mind, and trying to include it even if we don't have all the perfect measures at this point in time. So it's part of that conversation. That's very helpful. So then we kind of touched on C, the special services provided in those areas. So the evening, weekend, infant, toddler, and the home language of children, not English spoken by providers, so that we give some additional prioritization for that, because we know that's very important. And then under...
I would go in culturally specific, like care.
You would add that as another bullet.
Yeah.
So can you speak more about that?
Yeah.
More than, because we talked about adding providers of color at some point in time, but I think that doesn't fit necessarily like that in that area.
Yeah, well, I think it's the acknowledgement of the fact that there are many programs across the state that are specifically creating reaffirming spaces for particular populations of children, whether children are racially, ethnically, linguistically diverse. And we know that level of diversity one is a support to children and families, and people are, when you are creating culturally specific programs, you are trying to create a space for identity and identity support of children within your area. And I think that is a consideration, that if programs are doing that, they're doing exactly what we're asking them to do with like the family engagement, with engaging families and children on a different level. So I think culturally specific organizations that are providing services, or culturally specific providers, carving that out and doing it in a very intentional way is an asset to our system.
So we just have them self-report if they consider themselves a culturally specific organization or providing that care? Or how would we measure that or get the report on that? Just have them report that that's what they're doing?
Well, I think it's one of those, it's like the population of children that you're working with, the languages which you're speaking, like the primary language of the provider, of the center, the ways in which you're trying to engage with the community, so that family engagement piece. What's the vision and mission of your organization or your program? And how has that, impacted the way in which you recruit children, either bring in children to your program? So I think those are some considerations, and I think it is a piece of self-reporting as well.
Okay, so we have the home language under special services, and we have professional development of providers' first language not being English, and providers who do not speak the same primary language as children in their care. So we capture languages in those two pieces. So should we have, under the culture specific, do we want to divide it out into family engagement and recruiting for specific populations that are furthest from opportunity? Because I love that term, but I want to make sure that we're breaking it down in a way that it kind of fits and can be well incorporated.
And I'm trying to think of the family. This is Kelly. I'm trying to figure out how some of my providers in Eastern Oregon are going to look at that culturally specific and say, and have them not be able to define the cultural specificity that they are actually trying to accomplish. I have a lot of monolingual Spanish-speaking providers that could wrap their head around it in a heartbeat. And then I have a lot of others that would say, well, I'm doing cultural. And it's like, yeah, I don't think so. So somehow it's got to be, it needs to make sense across the state, especially to people who are, I just think about this particular family child care provider who is monolingual Spanish speaking. Her English is improving over the years. So I kind of hesitate now when I say monolingual Spanish because we have conversations all the time. But primarily her care is monolingual Spanish speaking, and her care is culturally Hispanic. They took in a refugee family and did an awesome job, just a great job. So,
but I also think culturally specific services does not have to exclude children from other cultures entering in there. I don't think that, so like for example, just say before I worked for the early learning division, I was working with programs, and just say like the program, they had teachers learn Spanish as a way to punish children. Just because Spanish was spoken in that program does not mean that that was a culturally specific program, but like it was like they were learning Spanish as a way of saying like, sit down, don't do these things. But they're like, well, we're speaking Spanish in our program. This is a positive, right? And I was like, well, you're using a part of someone's cultural heritage as a way of punishing them and putting a negative spin on it. So I think when we're fleshing out like kind of culturally specific some of those key markers to that, I think those are going to be ways that we can kind of distinguish that as a way of helping explain. Because I think regardless, if I say culturally specific, we're going to get some people that grasp it, some people that don't grasp it. But I think it's like fleshing out those kind of markers that you said as a way of, directing the field what we mean will be really key, because somebody can hear that, it's like, oh, I'm doing culturally specific programs. You're like, no, you are doing that.
But I don't want to be like food that they offer the children, for instance. Or games that they play, or I don't know. I mean, it seems to me there'd be a lot of markers that could be whether culturally specific, culturally responsive, whatever the term is.
Hi, this is Sadie online, and I wanted to chime in if I could. I think it would be really important if we name it to define it and not leave it up for interpretation. And here in Multnomah County, the Coalition of Communities of Color has done a lot of work around helping to define what culturally specific and culturally responsive is in terms of service delivery and in terms of organizations. And I recognize that may look a little different in an in-home child care provider setting, but essentially it's that those who are in leadership and who are providing direct service share the same cultural background and experience of the people they're delivering services to. And I think that we have some models for that. Kairos PDX has a model for that in their Early Learning Providers Network. So I think there's some really good work that's already been done to define what that means, and it sometimes lines up with language and sometimes doesn't, because we have English-speaking communities who also have culturally specific communities within them. So I want to make sure we kind of can distinguish between those two also, the language and culture piece.
Yes. Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, thank you.
That was awesome.
Yes, we might be following up with Sadie to get more if we need, and Liliane as well. So thank you guys very much. We'll definitely look at ways to incorporate that piece. And then looking at the provider professional development needs, new providers to give additional support to them, providers at a step 5 or below on the Oregon registry, so as they're building up their skill level on the registry, providers' first language is not English, and providers who do not speak the same primary language as the children in their care, where the professional development needs to look at for prioritization. Do you have thoughts or additions to that?
I love that. And this last one, when I think of my provider who is Spanish speaking, but she had one family and she had 1 or 2 children, Somali children, come in. So I guess I would want her to have some credit for that, even though most of the other children in her care spoke either English or Spanish. So I think that she would reach out and
So with this bullet, she would get credit for that, right?
Yeah. It doesn't mean that all the children in her care speak a different language in her, but that she included children who speak a different language.
Yeah, right. That's terrific. And then providers of color was a bullet that.
Yes, I don't know if provider of color fits under there. I don't think that's the right place to put it. That's when I just looked at the other list. It fit in with the list of things, but not with the title for the heading. So I think that providers of color and possibly the culture specific care, responsive, and family engagement piece might be stuff we need to look at if it fits into these, if we need to have a different area to add, probably different additional area, So there's probably something we'd add additional area to kind of capture those to make sure that we're fitting things into the heading. So definitely something we'll look at further.
Okay.
And then
we need to jump. Okay.
Yes.
What do you need from us in the next 10 minutes?
10 minutes. Well, the questions for the EIC in 10 minutes. And we kind of addressed number 1. So at the very bottom of the page, it starts with presentation to Equity Implementation Committee and has prioritizing resources in bold and large letters. At the bottom, these are specific questions for EEIC. Can we ask providers to collect race ethnicity data for their families? If so, what is the least burdensome way? And it sounds like we've answered that with utilizing forms that they already provide. And yes, this is something we can acceptably ask them to provide information on. We can ask, we cannot require.
So it'd be the intake form.
Yeah, the intake form, yes.
Referring
and the number 2 is how can work-based data be helpful as a marker? Because that's one piece that, again, we want to have more providers of color and more providers that speak languages other than English and all those other pieces. So to kind of talk a little bit about that marker and how that can be helpful for us. And probably the biggest thing that I would like for us to get from you is number 3. And this is asking what are some parent groups or organizations that represent communities of color and can provide feedback to this work. Because again, we want to make sure that we're getting directly from parents as well as some information. And so collecting that, we'd hope somebody in this group might have some linkages to groups that we could approach.
When you say this work, when you say feedback to this work, are you saying feedback to Spark, or are you talking about feedback for prioritization of resources?
Spark and the Spark overall, because we have other pieces too, probably like to get feedback from them and present to them when we have pieces going out. That the prioritization of resources would be one thing that we wanted to make sure we got family input on.
So you're looking at like a parent focus group?
Yes.
Being able to pull
there's an organization or somebody here with access to a group of parents that we can chat with to be able to get their thoughts on the Spark system, and if it is acknowledging diversity and is reaching children with from opportunity, if this kind of captures where it needs to go and talks to the parents. Is kind of what we're looking at.
So Sadie and Patricia and Rochelle, can you offer any suggestions as far as how to connect with parents to get input? Lillian, are they still online?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, this is Patricia.
Oh, go ahead, Patricia.
Well, I guess the best way to communicate with some of the families is by talking to them in person. I don't know how many do you guys need. We do have a lot of families that come into our classrooms, a lot of Latino families, because we have parent time where we provide parents with parenting workshops, and then they come and do parent and children together time in the mornings in the classrooms, in the infant, toddler, or preschool classrooms, to put in practice what they have learned. And that's where we do an evaluation of our program, and we ask them what are the things that are working for you and what are the things that we need to change. So I would say that maybe going to those specific programs that provide services for communities of color and talking to families.
So Patricia, is that an invitation for us to come and speak and gather at one of those events? Because that's what we recognize what we need to do, but we need to have people help open the doors to get us into those places, so we are getting parents to attend and we are getting a place where they feel safe and comfortable to share with us.
Oh, definitely. We are going to start our program next week. So after next week, we will have about 40 to 50 women that can definitely provide you some feedback from our culture and our program.
Excellent. We will be in touch, Patricia. Thank you. That's exactly what we were hoping for.
So where is that at?
Adelante Mujeres. It's in Washington County.
Yeah, I was going to say Washington. So,
no.
Hillsborough?
It is in different schools in Hillsborough and Cornelius also in Jose Pedro. We have some early Head Start classrooms in collaboration with OCDC Head Start. But the program that we run with Parent Time and Parent and Children together is at W.L. Henry. But I can definitely send you the information. If you shoot me an email, I'll send you the information and the address and everything else.
Leanne will hook us up.
So it's Metro, but it's Washington County and
Okay.
border. Sadie, were you going to speak, or Rochelle?
Oh, I was just going to say that I've used family surveys successfully in programs in the past.
Is that, Sadie, is that you?
No, that was Rochelle.
No, this is Rochelle.
Do you ever have groups of parents together? Because it might take some explanation around this rather than just sending a survey out. Am I right?
Yeah, more focused.
When I've used them, it's been part of the enrollment process. But that's kind of how the programs I've worked in have gathered that data. But not just the demographic info, but also, you know, info about what's important to individual families and what from their cultures they'd like to see incorporated in the program. So it kind of covers a variety of ground, but not only does it give us as a program the demographic info that we need, but it also gives teachers kind of the information about what they can include from families' cultures to help make classrooms more culturally responsive.
Okay, so you can follow up with Rochelle on that. And Sadie, do you have any access to any parent groups or organizations that help pull parents together and who might give feedback?
Yeah, definitely. Similar to Patricia, we're starting our programs up next week as well. And we bring parents together at 12 different schools in Multnomah and Washington counties, Latino parents who come together each week, and we have a parent workshop component of the program where the parents are all together. We do have a pretty structured curriculum for that time, so it would just be a matter of identifying, you know, how much time we might want during a class agenda to set aside for this conversation, and how many parents you're hoping to reach, and then we can figure out logistics.
Okay, thank you, Sadie.
Yeah.
Can I comment?
Yes.
So this is Kelly. I guess I have a lot of concern if you're going to bring groups of parents together to make it a focus group, because you're not going to get any representation from Eastern Oregon or frontier areas. So if you're looking for some feedback from parents, groups, or organizations, I would ask that you consider getting a reference from programs in frontier areas of a name of a parent and do a one-on-one phone call. It'll take you the same amount of time, maybe less time, to have that conversation, and you're going to get a very different perspective than what you're going to get with these groups. Our Head Start programs in Eastern Oregon, there's 4 of them in my hub, and they all have parent groups similar to this, and they could run a focus group and you could ask questions. But I still think that you're going to miss the parent input from parents who are in family care, or parents that are in a smaller, where these people, this criteria for prioritization, all of these care providers that we've been talking about are not the parent groups that you're going to get out of those programs. So you're going to get parent feedback from people who are not part of your prioritization. Does that make sense?
So how do we get the names of those parents?
I think we can do it through the Spark process. Sure, I can help you with that. A hub could help you with that because they should know the programs in the hub that are participating in Spark. And if a program is putting in the effort to do the Spark process, they ought to be able to be willing to give you a name. And I'm not saying that you're going to get 100% participation, but you should be able to get, you know, a couple of parents from each of the counties out of frontier areas. And I'm not the only frontier areas, there's several, but.
Is that something, this is Shauna again, is that something where you think that we could have a call where we invite like 5 parents to be on the same call and have it be a call with multiple parents, or you feel like it needs to be individual conversations? We just have very limited resources, so I'm trying to figure out how we can still meet the needs of getting the input we need in a very simple way. And
so I think it's going to cost you time and almost no money to do the one-on-one call, and I think you're going to get better feedback than if you put parents on. Just the technology of a call is intimidating. I mean, it's difficult for these people to butt into our conversation. It would be really hard for a parent but if they had a telephone call with a friendly person on the other end and you said, what do you think about this? I think they would tell you. But if they were on a group call, I think they would be less if you really want to connect with just an everyday parent that is looking for quality childcare and understands the SPARK process because their childcare provider has been going through it, I think that we could come up with some names. Okay. And I think the hub could help you, or CCR&R can help you.
And I agree with Kelly 100%. Most of us are used to being on calls with other people.
Yeah.
But for a parent, I mean, even when we have these meetings, you know, the engagement is different than if you're sitting across or if you're having a one-on-one. So I think that that's something that
if your resources are scarce and so you focus all of your focus groups in the area that you can get to within an hour, you've missed most of the state. I guess that's what I'm concerned with.
We know we very much recognize that, but trying to figure out the best way to connect and get that piece that we're looking for. So it's very helpful.
I just think it'll cost you time. It won't cost you travel. I know.
But you know, I think maybe there's also a way to think creatively about who else could be conducting the interviews.
Sure,
You know,
that's a great idea.
A local hub person.
What about our focused
If
child
you
care
can-
networks? They're all working through SPARK.
And
That's your resource that can do the one-on-one, or not even one-on-one. They could do a focus group in their professional development, but they're not doing it with parents. They're doing it with
Those are
providers.
providers, yeah.
But still, they could connect. They would have the mechanism.
Do we have, so those are great ideas. Sounds like we got some ideas for frontier. We have some ideas for more urban, which I know Washington County gets kind of, Cornell's a little bit closer to rural. So we have that, which is great. And we have a strong Hispanic, Latino families represented. Do we have other populations of color and like other refugee, Russian, like other ideas about how to reach other groups of parents?
This is Sadie. I would suggest reaching out to Kairos PDX to connect with African American in-home childcare providers.
Yeah, great idea.
in addition to that, thanks, Sadie, for stealing my thunder on that one. But,
Sorry, Ms. Hammond.
That's okay. Black Parent Initiative, and they do have an upcoming event. But I was trying to pull it up to see, you know, how user-friendly it would be to do something. How about a Head Start? Most definitely. I put them at the top of the list because they've been in this thing for a long time.
This is Carmen. I'd be willing to talk to Leslie Barnes too about seeing if any of the providers in the focus in the work network, which is African American in-home providers, if they would be interested in helping reach out to parents.
I would even say SCI, because they do interact with a lot of parents, and they're not all Self-Enhancement Incorporated. Connie Hobson. ERCO, for sure, because we all can.
How about NAIA?
And I would say NAIA, absolutely.
I would also suggest Opano as a way of reaching out to Asian American families. And I think it's there are groups of individuals that we don't normally reach sometimes when we have these. I don't know the engagement that you may have had with Opano, or Asian American communities, so please excuse me, but I do think that is a community group that and when I say community group, with the understanding that there's different ethnicities within Asian Americans, is a group that we miss a lot.
That's very good to know. And
Our
we
group that we
actually
miss a
help
lot.
make it connected to?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. And Joyce with ERCO,
Jimette Dogo, she would be the contact person.
how do you
spell that?
Well, they call him Jimmy, but it's Saint Jimette. But Jimmy and DOGO. And he's actually one of the grantees that we have with the African American Black Student Success Plan.
Okay.
And,
So if I can find it online, I'm good. If not, I'm going to track you down, Joyce.
oh, no problem. No problem. I could get you his contact information.
Excellent. And Carmen, I might also be bothering you to get more stuff with Leslie Barnes if I don't find that easily. Is that okay?
The other person is Somalian, Abdi Bashir, who I think he was reporting something to school. And I can send you his information too.
Perfect.
Connecting him to the.
And his program is Cairo.
Cairo, yeah.
Okay. Well, that was the biggest thing. I think I forgot the 10 minutes you gave me.
Yeah.
If you have additional thoughts on this and you read through the other policy questions and everything else, feel free to connect with me. Lillian can help you do that, and I'll pass it on to our friends at WU and TRI and the Spark Ad Hoc group. So thank you very much. We will probably be coming back to you guys again because we really appreciate your input. So thank you so much for taking time for us.
Let me just ask Robin and Tom if you have any feedback for us. Are we covering what you were looking for today? You drove a long way to get here.
Monmouth.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, we were having the similar questions. We were looking at what we could do. It's data we wanted forever. It's child level data, and we took it to the ad hoc committee. They had the same question and then sort of the same answer. So I feel like now there's I think it's a lot of division work to talk about how do you start requiring providers to collect that data and share it and all of those pieces, because it seems like we all agree that it's a priority, and now there's some pretty strong recommendations that that's the way to go. So this was great in my mind.
Yeah, I would second that. I think it was great. I think we got a strong recommendation that we've been looking for support for a recommendation. Is that a good way to go? And I think we've heard that it is, and that we can continue to pursue that. And lots of other little pieces of information that I think will be really valuable to put in here. I think there was enough that I don't know. I'm wondering if you might not see this again. Did we get it? That kind of thought. So yeah, I think there was a lot of valuable stuff, and we may find more difficult to build in as we start working on it and have additional questions.
Okay. And so you'll be taking some of this feedback to the ad hoc committee.
Yeah, so based on this feedback, we have this feedback and the feedback from the ad hoc committee. It'll be integrated into the next iteration, and the next iteration will go to the ad hoc committee. And then if it gets there, if they feel like they still need more from you guys, then we'll bring it to you guys again, because you guys are really nice to let us come talk to you. Yes. But there's definitely other pieces of Spark we'll be visiting.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Nice to see you. Nice to come on this way.
It is nice being in person here. It's just hard to connect remotely and really get a feel for what's going on. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming and driving all this way.
Yeah.
I-5 should be on your side.
Yeah,
going down.
We're good to go.
Don't jinx it.
I know, right?
Yeah, parking.
I think your trip is probably more complicated than my trip, except walking around this building. Except,
Yeah. And I think that was part of why I said, I need to go and pick her up.
I know,
Because
getting into
between the rain and that's going to be much easier.
I never had rain today.
Oh, you didn't?
No.
No,
It was
that's
raining in
raining
Boise. When I was in Boise, there was no rain, and they said it was raining here. So I'm wherever I put it.
Well, I'm taking that there.
Okay.
Because they carry me umbrella. Thank you,
Robin.
Let's work. Good work.
Please carry magical umbrella.
Thank you, Shauna.
However, the rain has cleaned the air. I
Don't
love it.
forget
my coat.
Okay.
I still have my backpack. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Thanks, Shauna. Talk to you Friday.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. All right, great. Yeah, great conversation. So we have about half an hour left, and we are going to look at our work plan, right, Lillian? That's the work session 2. And then also talk about membership recruitment strategy. So why don't we start with our work plan that is also in front of us, and you probably have on the screen for people on the phone.
Yes. 1 second, please. My computer is deciding not to respond to me. Okay.
While you're looking for that, I just want to tell everybody our CEO was going to come and welcome you and greet you, but he had another meeting, and since we were kind of trying to get everything set up, he was.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, he'd be welcome to come in November, assuming we're invited back.
Yeah, and in November, all of this nonsense out there is supposed to be done in October.
Oh.
And this building is really easy to get into when you don't have all of that going on.
When all the entrances aren't closed.
Oh, it's terrible.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
Okay, anyway, so we ready?
Yeah, so I think the beauty of the Equity Implementation Committee, our work is largely driven by the work of other committees. So at this point now, we're kind of in the revving up stage. We're literally starting again after the beginning of this new fiscal year, and all of our other committees are also in that process. So I put on what I currently have, and probably within the next month to 2 months, as people are like re-revving up their committees, we're going to get additional items. So a bulk of the things that are currently on the list, like we're going to be receiving one update. So again, we wanted to build in that feedback loop. So this is just like for the kind of the first 6 months. So many of the projects that we talked about, that we advised on, or y'all advised on and created recommendations for, they've had time to.
You didn't have a problem getting back, did you?
No, I just came down the steps.
Yeah, well, I started to tell you could do that too, but I figured.
I was like, oh, those steps, I saw somebody going up them.
Yeah, okay. All right.
So groups had opportunity to present to us, and now they're going to be kind of coming back for updates, so we can see how the work landed. And for these particular presentations, and you'll see the X and you'll see updates, I'm going to specifically ask them to tie in, like, hey, what was the feedback, and how did you incorporate it? So their presentation will be structured around that. So it's not going to be like a reintroduction of the topic, but more of a, hey, here's what we heard, here's how it was embedded, here's why, if it wasn't embedded, why it wasn't embedded, and how are they working through. So again, kind of shaping those update meetings as, something that can, give us some just real detailed information around the recommendations that the committee provided for us. So you'll see that for the first kind of page and a half, like bodies of work that we've already worked on, and they're going to be bringing us updates. And then there's a couple of things that are included in our charter that, we still haven't had an opportunity to engage in. And I think this would also be a great opportunity for us to think about, like, what can this look like for this committee. So one, so there's been a piece around the grant making process, so the RFP process, and how are we specifically, in this case, asking or how are y'all specifically providing recommendations for the division around how they do that? What are some particular questions that the division can use when putting out RFPs, supporting that process, looking at the workflow of that, to ensure that there's multiple opportunities for intentional engagement with equity and seeing that flush throughout the whole process, and responding to some of the workflows and things of that nature. So you'll see that within the review request for proposals RFP section. There was a couple also underneath that. We have policies and accountability structures. So probably in the beginning of this year, there was a lot of conversation around, and I think, did we meet in this room? I think this was in the room that we met in when we had this conversation. I think that was the first meeting you arrived on. Wow, it's all coming back to me.
September or October.
That's right.
Ooh. Wow. So it was around how are we creating a space where other organizations, community-based organizations can come to us, present to us around kind of bodies of work or policies that they are either promoting or trying to implement that's going to impact early learning, and kind of providing that space. And with that opportunity, providing that space, also us looking at what the structure of that can look like to help guide that body of work. So that's that next section. And the last section is around our membership. And as you can see, the X's for all these boxes are always selected because every month we're trying to do something a little bit more. So if you actually go to the last page, or the second to last page of your document, or to your packet, you'll see the Equity Implementation Committee membership recommendation kind of form. And you can see when you flip on the back, you'll see kind of our current membership. And let me pull this up online as well. Oh, maybe I don't have that document. It's for everyone online. I'm sorry, I don't have that document saved to my computer. However, it was emailed to you yesterday by Sharon. You can see where we're having vacancies at. So I think the most notable one are parents. We have parents that are members of EIC, so they bring in that perspective. However, I think the parents that we're thinking about recruiting, we have not yet brought them to the table yet and figured out ways of including parents that may not have, the luxuries that we have to have a jobs and, opportunities to sit at the table in the middle of the day to have these conversations. So we have vacancies specifically in our health sector, human service sector, our tribal government cluster section. So I think a big piece around that is us kind of thinking about if there's, any individuals that we know that may be a good fit for this committee, and then having them, ushering them and supporting them and applying for the committee so that we can start filling some of these vacancies. And I think that piece around within the work plan around membership, it kind of centers around that. How are we adequately communicating kind of the goals and missions of the Equity Implementation Committee out into the public, and how are we recruiting individuals to sit on the committee to provide these really important perspectives that we have tangentially because of our collective experience, but finding somebody from those different sectors to have that focus, I think would be important.
Sue and I had, this is Rochelle, Sue and I had a conversation about me shifting into a parent role since I'm no longer at Peninsula and since Kate joined and we represent the same organization. So I'm not sure if that information ever got back to you, but.
No, but it will now.
Great.
So just one seat.
Yay. That's great.
Well, I think, and thank you, Patricia, I guess I didn't communicate. Rochelle, sorry. I didn't communicate that back. And finding, parents who are able to attend a meeting, even remotely, from 9:30 to 11:45, just creates obviously some challenges.
Sure.
Yes. And I doubt if all of us and the rest of the committee members are able to meet at night, for instance.
I have.
So it's always that balance.
Yeah. So I don't know if we're allowed to give recommendations to the governor's office about things that would help us maybe get parents. I had a legislative idea that would make serving on a committee like a civil protection, like needing time for jury duty, or so that your employer would have to give you the time to serve on a committee appointed by the governor, or that is a government appointed position. And I don't know what that would mean for writing like a per diem or something like that, or if we would have that in the budget too to support parents for that. But currently doing this kind of work, it's kind of a position of privilege because all of us are in jobs that support us doing this and have a stake in the game too, so to speak, whether it's altruistic or not. But I think to be able to really encourage parents and employers to make them realize that this isn't just the work of those of us who do policy, but we need input from everyday citizens as well to make good policy.
Right.
Just give them that little nudge, like this is a protected thing.
And that might be a long-term strategy.
Right.
I mean, they don't even do that for council members who are directly appointed by the governor,
Right.
much less for committees of a council.
Right.
So I'm guessing we feel.
Right. I can't remember. I talked to some governor's staff about it too, and they were like, "Well, that's really interesting." And I was like,
See, it would apply to other committees as well.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Like with our,
100?
I mean, it was-
Black Student Success,
Yeah.
we had some parents on our, unfortunately, they moved out of the state, but still, I mean, it is a challenge if you don't have the resources and time.
Right. Well, and then I think a lot of employers don't see, like, they don't see what they would have to gain from letting their employee have that time to do this sort of thing.
One of the things I was just thinking of, we need to maybe make a pitch to some of these organizations. I'm thinking specifically of BPI.
Black Parent
I should
Initiative.
have a conversation with their executive, Charles.
Well, he knows.
But nobody has ever asked him to identify a parent who he could ask to represent that organization on this committee.
So I guess I was thinking about a parent who would represent parents, not a parent, because my thought was thinking about some parents that work for Malheur ESD where I work. I have a Latina that has a child in preschool that has had her child in monolingual Spanish-speaking childcare, and now she's in preschool and will go into kindergarten next year. She has some great input, but she comes from my organization, but she wouldn't represent my organization.
Right. I don't think it's the representing of the organization, but like using that organization as the like kind of vouching, like, hey, this is a great committee to sit on.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
So would the ESD pay for 2 hours of time?
I mean,
I would.
Yeah.
Okay. I can do that. Yeah, I can do that. Is that okay with you? And I would even pay for her, if I were to travel, I would pay for her travel to come as well. We
have 3 vacancies.
So she could be a parent, and she's Latina, and she's just phenomenal. So I will ask her if she would represent a parent voice.
Yeah, Rochelle's got the professional background and is a parent.
I love
it.
Yeah, there's 2.
So if that's acceptable, this is Sadie, if that's acceptable, there's someone on our staff who I know is available Tuesday mornings because she's on our staff and I know her schedule. And she's also a parent of a young child and would be a fantastic representative. But I had the same question about, given that she also works here, is that okay?
Right. I think at this point, if we can get Kelly's Latina mom to join us, it would be also another Eastern Oregon voice as well as a Latina. And then if we could get an African American through VPI.
Or one of the other organizations, it would be great.
But I think having the opportunity to develop a track record with parents, like successfully engaging parents. I think that's I guess the biggest thing that's coming through my mind is, and I think also, with, the possibilities of these new parent members, really thinking strategically about like other kind of non-traditional ways of engaging with parents. So if that means, because we're all connected, so like BPI, like when they have their parent university, having an opportunity even to present something there, or thinking about other, other opportunities where there's going to be groups of parents together to talk. I think that builds a reputation, that builds a chance, an opportunity for people to hear, like, oh, Equity Implementation Committee, Early Learning Council. That could be something I want to join, and I think it gets the word out because you get invited to so many committees sometimes that if you don't know of the committee, I'm not going to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to join. I have no point of reference to y'all.
Yeah. So my other question is, as I'm looking over this list, we have a seat where we haven't really had any participation in a while. Have you circled back to the Urban League representative to see if.
Yeah, Richard's no longer at Urban League.
He's no longer at
I tracked him down.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I had an email conversation with him at one point. Well, actually, I
tracked them down after you.
Yeah.
He's no longer interested. I thought I had given you that information.
Yeah.
And given it to Sharon. He should be off the list.
Yeah, he had told me that he was. So then, but then he continued.
I think he's not on the email list anymore. I just think that.
Yeah.
So we can take his name off.
I had given his because I had gotten his Yahoo email address from him like via Facebook, and then I sent it to. Is it like
He's really interested in our work, but he really doesn't have the time.
Yeah. So we need a researcher.
Totally understand that. We need 2 more providers if we're losing Rochelle too.
Isn't there Rochelle, wasn't there somebody else from Knowledge Universe?
Kate Jordan Down joined recently.
Yeah.
She's out of town right now, so she's not on this call.
Jordan Down.
Yeah, she's on this list on the roster from June.
Yes, she was on the phone.
Okay, I was gonna say, I'm pretty sure I know.
I just sat down next to a piece of paper. I don't know who it belongs to, but.
That's mine.
Oh, okay.
You can use
Yeah.
There's not consistency from this following this list saying expertise will be sought, which I think comes out of our charter maybe, and the number of seats that are listed here. So I think we need to modify the number of seats to reflect what's in our charter.
Oh.
So you'll see it's, for instance, leaders of culturally specific organizations should be 3 instead of 4.
And we have 3.
Yeah. So we need, and that's true also of early learning providers, should be 2. And then we add
We haven't heard from Nicole. Have we heard from Nicole from a while? Because I was also trying to track her down, and even asked Anolda because she's from her organization. And
She attended multiple meetings in the spring.
When I was out. Okay.
Yeah, but I don't know if she was able to.
Because I was
a provider.
and 2 health sectors. So
I have
do you know about the disparities between the charter and these numbers?
I have to double check because I'm pretty sure that we printed this off. I mean, this document came from the last manual that we had. And I'm pretty sure the members' recommendations, but those are the correct numbers that we sought out for this committee. So I'm not quite sure if this was, I'm not quite sure. I have to double check.
Okay.
So before I went on leave, I had some emails out to health sector and human services people, putting feelers out for recommendations, and so I will follow up with them.
Okay, I think the other thing we need to be thinking about is geographic representation. And we all, especially you all who live in London for a while,
Somebody, could you please silence your phone?
Yeah.
Hey, this is Carmen. Sorry, you guys are kind of cutting out.
Oh,
Somebody
hi, Carmen.
needs to mute their phone.
Yeah, I think maybe they just did. I think they did. So I was saying that I think we need to consider the geographic representation of our committee and all committees of the council. And because most of our committee members live in the metro area, that's where our recommendations for additional members usually come from. So as we look at health sector, human services, tribal government, you know, I think with vacancies, we need to be looking at Southern Oregon or, you know, Coast, Bend, Central Oregon.
Yeah.
So, I think with Kelly having
parents, and
we would have 2 from Eastern Oregon, yeah, which
I
would
agree.
be great. And maybe if we could find somebody from Northeast, maybe up in the Blue Mountain area as well. Or Four Rivers. I will obviously be a parent from Metro area. And Rochelle's in Metro. So I just think we need to think about other networks that we have. Krista Rude might have somebody in Four Rivers. Good idea. Yeah, so touching base maybe with some of the hub directors around the state.
So one of the people that I would like to recommend is Kendra Hughes. She lives and she works in Northwest. She is responsible for professional development for early childhood throughout the state. So she would be an excellent addition.
So she would be a K-12 professional?
No, I would say early learning researcher, because she's
nice. That's
brilliant.
Kendra?
Yes, I'm sorry, 1 second. We have a comment from the phone line.
And I've actually asked her if she thought she would be available to serve on this committee if she was invited. And she said, I'd be thrilled.
Cool. So what's her last name?
Hughes, Hughes.
And she is
she's the PD person for the Northwest Regional ELC. Okay. And she covers the whole state.
Okay. Yes, and so that's a great example where they may live here, but they've got that.
Well, the outreach that she has is quite amazing. And she's also as I was listening to our discussion about engaging with parents, she loves doing that. And I think her crew out there, Rob Saxon, and we'll let her do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, she'd be a great addition to this committee.
This is Carmen on the line. Can I just jump in with an ask?
Yes.
We're like the RNR system and all of the directors are really happy to help spread the word across the state that we're looking for this, but we really need something, a specific document to send out with actual like information. Like we can email out to people and say, hey, this is what we're looking for. This is what the position entails. This is how you apply. But I can't really do any recruitment without something solid like that. So if we could put something together that we can share, I think that it won't be much of a challenge to fill it. It's just that we need something concrete.
Okay, and we had that because that's how when they did that last round, and there was a document that had a link to it where you could fill out the contact.
When I've been talking
right, but that seems to have gone. I've asked for it a couple times and haven't seen it, so I don't know if it was being edited but if we could get the new version, that would be really helpful, I think, for all of us.
Well, I think it would need to be updated anyway since we're looking for specific positions.
Sectors.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I think that'll be really key is to be clear about that because there's nothing worse than a mass apply for this. And then there's not a position that you can fit into. Well, especially with our record of success. That's what I was thinking about this. Our record of they're all going to want to apply.
We hope.
Are we like on the culturally specific? We have the 3 seats. Is there any reason why we couldn't add a 4th? Because, I think we've done a good job with who we have, but, who else isn't here? We don't have
tribal is what we're.
Right. Well, we don't have tribal. We don't have people from Russian, Ukrainian, Asian communities, refugee community, so who, I'm saying that we need to get somebody from every one of the, one of those communities, but who are we missing? And, maybe how do we reach out to at least maybe have the additional seat, but then also make sure that we're inviting people to come and participate, even if they're not a voting member sometimes, be part of the conversation.
First thing is to find out why there's this disconnect between what's here and what's here. Yeah, and then I think we can go from there.
Yeah.
Because if we do have the latitude to increase the numbers, and add some more positions, I think that would be great.
And is it possible to get somebody from like the Coalition of Communities of Color? I mean, I know they have a new director. I don't know a whole lot, but I just know that we often reference some of the tools that they have, and it would be nice to have those tools.
It would be nice, but I think
Closer.
it would be even nicer to have specific members, you know. Because the other group I'm thinking about is the African immigrant community. I mean, we have learned so much from our
That would be really helpful.
success, and I'm sure we could get someone who is well versed in what some of those issues are.
That would be helpful over in Malheur County, because we really.
I want to talk to Alfie.
Do it. Well, and
would be interested.
I'll check in with Alyssa concerning the numbers, and also pose the question around what's the latitude that we have around just saying, like, if there's a particular sector that we want to increase or perspectives that we want to bring in place, like kind of what's the process around that, and I'll inquire about that.
Right, I think if it's in our charter, which I was assuming this reflected, then we would need to revise the charter and go back to the council and say this is how we'd like to.
Actually, the number of members are not explicitly mentioned within our charter.
Yeah.
This document came from kind of like a guidance support document for committees, because in the charter itself, it does not reference sectors and or number of positions.
Oh, wow.
I've read it a lot.
We spent a lot of time with that charter.
So I think that one thing for our next agenda item is to kind of make sure that we're within our right to expand or add to this list. I think that would be great.
And then from there, we can make our specific call to.
Right. So we know we have a tribal vacancy.
Yes.
And have had forever, as far as I understand. So what are some thoughts about how to fill that vacancy specifically?
I reached out to, I was doing a lot of, like, just contacting people who had presented, contacting people who had been on the committee, contacting just people I know, saying, here's this vacancy, can you help us? Like, I was targeting people on specific vacancies, and I got a lot of, like, I don't know.
Well, and Lillian
but I
would be able to help us with this.
So with this particular one, it calls out tribal government cluster. There is a tribal education cluster that meets quarterly. So they have and then they represent the 9 federally recognized tribes, and either their educational director or a member of an education committee for a tribe, or a designee appointed by a tribe to represent them at the cluster, because, you know, with that specific language, that's what my mind went to. We are in the process of kind of identifying members, and the way this I have heard it work with other tribal appointments. You kind of send them a letter of interest saying, like, hey, because of your background and the work that you do, we are interested in, you know, you being on this committee, and then depending on the particular tribe, that means in order for them to be a designee for, you know, or a representative of the tribe, that has to almost go up to the tribal council to get approval so that they can, you know, sit on a particular committee. So we're looking at options of, you know, identifying individuals from that cluster group, and, you know, sending out like interest letters so that we can see whether or not we can get someone to join our.
Well, that certainly puts perspective on why my why my requests have fallen flat.
So
I was not being culturally sensitive.
So active. Should we send a letter to the cluster, tribal education cluster, specifically requesting somebody to serve on this committee?
Yeah, we can do it one of two ways. I'm the Early Learning Division representative for the education cluster. Actually, this evening I'm driving down to Canyonville for the meeting tomorrow. So we can send out a mass email. I was thinking more one-on-one and kind of sending out a couple email or a couple like letter of request, and seeing individuals that have shown interest in the past for this committee to see what transpires from that, and then if nothing happens, then we can like cast the net wider.
I was thinking of giving a letter to the cluster, or is the cluster not kind of a organized group? So handing a letter to whoever convenes or runs the meeting would kind of start the official process.
I think for this approach, we need to be just more specific, or like with the request from individuals. I don't think, and this is just my opinion, I don't think a mass letter that may just be like kind of whomever would like to jump on may be the best route to go for this particular group.
Okay, so we'll assume you won't leave Canyonville until you have somebody.
I'm already working on a letter. I think there's work happening behind the scenes. Okay. I'm on it.
Well, now the other thing though is back to Carmen's request that we have something. Will you be able to pull up something that shows what the responsibilities are, or is it all on the something? Because we want people to consider it, to know what they're getting themselves into and what we expect of them.
Yes, there are additional documents, and we haven't reviewed this in a while, probably like over 2 years ago. But there is a kind of it's kind of like guidelines for different committees, and it kind of lays out our charter, the roles and commitment, and then we broke them down into sectors.
So that's a generic kind of thing. It's nothing specific.
That's nothing specific. So like within the letters of.
Yeah, does it say on the website, on the council website? And you click on the committees and before it got revised, I thought there was a little definition.
There was a little like blurb of like kind of what the EIC was, and then it linked to our applications in multiple languages.
So maybe we should look at that next time, Lillian. If you could bring it, well, obviously you'll get an answer to the numbers issue, and then what is the process if we want to change the numbers, whatever they are. And then maybe look at what is on the website, or what do we think would be a good descriptor of this committee's work. And then hopefully we'll have some more information about parents. And who's going to follow up with do we want to move forward and ask Charles for a parent recommendation, or do we want to wait and do a broader, email to a larger group?
I'm trying to remember, because I had an email conversation and was trying to schedule a coffee with somebody that was from BPI, because she was interested, but it was happening like while I was juggling legislative and getting ready to take leave. So I can.
And let me just say, we could use some gender diversity on this committee as well.
Sure, yeah.
Just to think about, the council needs that as well, so it's not unique. But I think as we look at our work, it'd be great to have a dad on this committee, right?
That'd be great. I mean, right now we have Lenny.
Yes.
Which is great. So I think there's a big picture here that
we were talking about for the parents.
That's what I was specific.
I think it's a yes and conversation. I think it's a nice warm touch, and having opportunities just to spread the word out to a wider sector. And we may also grasp, parents that are at like the intersection of health sector and this, and being parents, and
I was thinking, we have a local that works in Lynn, Benton, Lincoln County, and they do human services type stuff, and I know that they do a lot of work cross-sector with the Head Start in Lincoln County too. So maybe not one of my members per se, but somebody that they might know that might be good for human services sector. And then the health sector, I had contacted Dr. Harganani, who used to serve on the council, to see if she knew somebody that would be good for serving on the health sector, and so that's who I would need to follow up with.
We could check with, this is Kelly,
Yamhill, just because the hub and the CCO are so tight there. There might be somebody in that CCO over there that gets early childhood and.
Yep.
Yamhill.
So my question and my concern is, we're talking about putting all this stuff out there. We need to have coordinated in terms of what we're asking for, who we're asking, because we don't want 3 people asking for a parent and find out we don't have a role, you know, if we want to get some.
Right.
So can this wait until next month for us to kind of plan
Right.
our little recruitment strategy?
I think
and
that's a great idea.
Yes.
We'll get more information and have accurate numbers. Want me to wait on mine too?
I think we should.
Okay.
That's a good idea, Joyce.
Okay, so everybody on the phone, we're just holding off on recruitment for another month while we get some more information. And that'll be a really big piece of our agenda then in October, so we can.
And so what I would like to ask is that whatever documents we have that speak to the roles, the recruitment, people that we bring that to the meeting, we need to do modifications into that.
Okay. So as you know, we have decided at our last meeting that we would alternate in-person meetings with virtual meetings. And that means October would be a go-to-meeting or whatever we're using.
Yeah, go to meeting.
Go-to-meeting. And then November, if we're invited back.
Oh, yeah, everything will be fine.
Joyce?
You'll get a chance to see the beautiful aquarium downstairs.
Wait, right.
Is that what they're putting in?
Oh, no, it's already, the lobby's all done. This junk came after.
Oh.
So we'll plan to be back here in November, but for October, we'll do a virtual meeting. And for the 3 of you on the phone, if you're still on the phone, I'd love at some point to have a conversation with each of you about when we're in Portland at this beautiful setting, if we can encourage you to come and join us so we can have more of that relationship building, which is really why we're trying to do this in person every other month, is believing that it's easier to build relationships when you're in the same room. So just something, sort of putting out a request as we look at November, and I know Joyce was pretty vocal about that in July, or whenever we had the last time.
And I will send information about the park. There's a smart park right down the street here, and that's why I would encourage people to park. Because we have parking in this building, but it's pretty expensive, it's like $5 an hour.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And they only take cars. They got a new management company here.
Okay. Well, thank you, Joyce, for allowing us, or inviting us to be here.
And providing amenities.
And there's just one more piece included in the last email. I received a request for this. The Early Learning Division released a statement on how we're supporting children and families with our state in light of the DACA decision. So that statement is included in your the email that I was sent out. And if you are here in person, I have a copy of it. Included in here. I think some of the highlights from the statement.
Thank you.
So one, Miriam Calderon, our new Early Learning Division Systems Director, laid out I just think a very beautiful statement. Again, positioning this conversation again. As I'll quote, it is not just an immigration issue, it's an early childhood issue, and citing some really great references around the destabilization of families and children's physical, mental, and emotional health, and specifically identifying about 6 different key things that partners can do, early learning partners can do to help children and families. The next step that she laid out for this was kind of just starting internally with collecting materials, resources, and publishing that on the Early Learning Division website and providing links. And with the next step, and including our partners in that conversation, so community CBOs, community advocates that are specifically working with immigrant communities, pulling everyone together to start a conversation and to build off of the great work that's already been happening. I want to acknowledge the fact that we're joining this, very late in the game, so we know that there's so many organizations, specifically within the state of Oregon, that's been doing really great work, and kind to hear perspective and, position ourselves as learners as how we're looking at how we're serving children and families in our state that's being impacted by these decisions.
Is this being sent out to all licensed providers? Is it?
I know it was sent out through our listserv. I don't know.
Because I know I got the email. I got the email. Yeah.
Oh, did you?
It's good. Because I send it out. Providers don't use email. So, like, if we have, like the next time you're sending out documents for, through the Office of Child Care, if we can send this, to the child care providers too, because I know that for many of the providers, this is a big concern. They take care of kids who they live with the fear that their parents are going to be taken away from them.
And this isn't new. They've felt this, but they know what this feels like. And they're doing it again. So
right. So we can send it out. I don't know if there are like written communications that are not email that get sent out to providers on a regular basis. If this just could be included with that, it doesn't have to be an additional.
I wonder if I saw something through CCR&R. I wonder if that was one of the. I think that it came through the. Something that came out of Western Oregon or somewhere.
Yeah, and I'm certainly happy I'm happy to help share it with those who do email. I'll forward it to those who do email. But I think.
I just wanted to just respond to that. Just wanted to respond to that and know there's more to come. And super excited about the position that the division has taken and the work ahead to build off of all the great, or to jump in to all the great work that's already happening within the state to help our child care programs and providers and children and families.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, everybody on the phone. Next meeting is October something. 17th. And we will have it be a go-to meeting, and then hopefully see people again here in November. All right, thanks everybody.
And I'll say that if anybody wants to come down here to do it, so we could, I would make this room available.
November is the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. Just saying.
And is that a problem?
Not for me.
Oh, okay.
That day before Thanksgiving, though, I'll let y'all know.
I think it's only if there's no school, but I think there is school on that
Yeah, we
day.
usually get out on Wednesday,
Right,
Yeah.
not Tuesday, so.
Oh, you say it's the day before?
It's
Tuesday.
Tuesday. It's
So
a Tuesday.
before-
It's a Tuesday before Thanksgiving.
So if I travel, I'll make it for after.
So that was the conclusion of our meeting today. Thanks so much. And if you have any questions, concerns, please feel free to email to myself.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
I'm waving at the screen. I never shared my camera. Bye.
Because you were sharing your documents. Why would you?
Have a great day, everyone.